Recreational activities, people had asked about that. They've resumed at Heron Park Community Centre, and you can book skating at efund.toronto.ca. And the scope of work for the Coronation Employment Zone was passed at Scarborough Community Council meeting, the last one, and public engagement will soon be underway about how we can bring more jobs to the West Hill area and reinvigorate this employment zone for the 21st century. If you have questions about other things in the ward, please do feel free to contact me at councillor_McKelvey@toronto.ca. But recognizing we had much of the same audience, I wanted to give you those quick updates. Tonight is about the supportive housing project, and it's your opportunity to learn more and ask questions of city staff. I'd like to really thank them for being available, for working hard on this project, and for joining us tonight to answer your questions.
Thank you, Councillor. And before we move into our presentation, I'd just like to share a couple more slides with you. So the next thing I'd like to speak about is the guidelines for respective dialogue. And just want to make sure that everyone understands that we're here tonight to hear from everyone who wants to share their perspective in a safe and respectful way. This community meeting is meant to be a safe space where people can listen and share. And for that reason, discrimination or abusive language of any kind will not be tolerated and would result in a warning followed by removal from the event. However, I'm sure we will not need to go down that road, and we'll have a good discussion around the table about the plans for this site. I'd like to share next our agenda for this session, and here you'll see it up on the screen. So we've just completed our welcome and introductions, and we're going to discuss homelessness in Toronto. We're going to provide you with some supportive housing proposed at 4626 Kingston Road details. You'll see the proposed site plan and the modular housing building and some examples of what that might look like. We'll share with you the process and the timeline for approvals. And we'll also explore some ways that you might have or ideas you might have for how you could support the success of this building. So before we go much further, I'd like to introduce Abigail Bond. She's the Executive Director of the Housing Secretariat. Abby's going to take us through the first part of our presentation, and then we'll come back to the group for some discussion.
Okay, thank you, Diana. Did you want to do the how to participate first? Or?
Thank you, yes. So when it comes to the discussion period, we'll ask you to please hold your questions until those discussion places, and then you'll be able to use the raise hand function, and I'll keep a speaking order and call out your name when it's time for you to speak. Thanks.
Thanks, Diana, and thanks to everyone who's come tonight to learn more about this project. So one of the reasons that we are making such an effort across the City of Toronto to deliver more supportive housing is because we really are facing a difficult situation with regard to housing and homelessness in our city. And we acknowledge that we want to take advantage of the federal funding programs that have made themselves available recently, because it really takes many of us coming together to really solve this issue and deal with homelessness. So as you can see on this slide, there are many different groups who are essential to the solution here. It includes ourselves at the city, you as neighbours and community groups, also the federal and provincial governments, as well as health partners and non-profit partners as well. It really takes us all working together. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, we see more than 8,000 people each night experiencing homelessness in Toronto, and the pressure has really piled on with since the pandemic began. We see more visible signs of homelessness across our city, in our parks and in encampments. And it really is urgent that we need to provide more homes with supports to everyone so that everybody has a place that's safe and affordable that they can call home. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, it's far too easy today to find your way into homelessness. This could be the result of issues around loss of income due to losing your job. Maybe many people have lost their jobs during the pandemic. It could be a contributing factor like having a disability or having mental health issues or other substance use and addiction issues. There are often people experience discrimination, whether they be Indigenous or Black people. And as well, we generally have insufficient amount of affordable housing in our city, and it's very difficult to find it and keep it. So there are many different ways why homelessness is far too common in our community and in our city, and these are some of the ways that people find their way there. Right. So it's important at the city for us to have a comprehensive and ambitious kind of action plan to address some of the issues that our city is facing with regard to housing and homelessness. So a housing TO plan is a 10-year plan that really has at its heart a number of actions that are about providing dignity and supporting well-being for everyone in our city so that everyone has a home. Slide, please. So as Councillor McKelvey mentioned, we're seeing many different actions, many different projects across the whole city of Toronto. So since December 2020, we've led the development of 12 supportive housing projects in 11 different wards. So 3 of these projects are complete, with 9 more underway, and this is almost 1,000 units of new supportive housing across the city. So today we're here to talk about new homes with supports at 4626 Kingston Road. So we purchased this site earlier in the year, and I've been looking to create new homes on the site with 24/7 supports for residents. So the first thing we've been doing is looking to renovate the existing motel to create 22 new homes for people, and that work is well underway now and will complete before the end of the year. Slide. Second part of the proposal is to add a new 5-story building using modular construction with 64 homes. So future residents of this site will include women, Indigenous residents, seniors, people with disabilities, and other people who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. Each of the new homes is a studio apartment, so each of them has their own bathroom and kitchen so that people can live with dignity. There will also be shared amenities on site in the modular housing building, including a shared laundry, a commercial kitchen, where meals can be prepared for the residents. There'll be a dining area where people can come together to eat, as well as a communal lounge area where people can meet to watch television or have as a recreation area. And there will also be programming space where staff can support residents on their health and well-being journey. Slide, please. So what actually is supportive housing? We get lots of questions about how this is different to other types of affordable housing that you might see in your community. So these are permanent rental homes with support services that are affordable to people who might be on receiving housing benefits or other government assistance. So the kinds of services that are provided on site, the kinds of supports, include some of the things that you see here. So life skills training and support, help to reconnect with family and friends, laundry, there may be help to get your ID or to find a bank or a place that you can, a library that you can reconnect with maybe your love of reading or something like that. This is really about trying to help people on their individual journeys back to health and well-being. There could also be meals provided on site, as well as other educational or kind of life supporting opportunities, as well as navigation back into the healthcare system. Many people have become disconnected from healthcare and are in urgent need of healthcare. Slide, please. So the reason we think that this will be successful in this location is because supportive housing is a tried and tested model. We see many thousands of units already in the city. And one of the key elements of success is the fact that they are managed by nonprofit housing operators who bring really professional building management experience, but also that expertise providing the customized supports that we were just talking about on the previous slide. So all the residents in these buildings will have made a choice to live here. They will be paying rent like other renters in your community and will be willing to use the services and supports that are on offer. And so the operator that we choose will take care of both the residents, the building, and also the property. So as I said, a key part of the success is in choosing the right professional and experienced nonprofit housing operator. And so the city will be going through a process to choose this operator. The kinds of criteria that we have used for previous competitions like this and that we will use in this situation is that they're effective, they have a track record in working with councillors and the local community for successful integration of buildings, that they have experience in managing affordable and supportive housing, that they have a strong track record in tenant engagement and communications, and really a strong level of experience in working with a full range of tenants, including marginalised and vulnerable populations. Okay, back to you, Diana.
Great, thanks, Abby. And we're now going to pause for a discussion. If we can just take the slide down so we can see the group on the panel. Thank you. So we'll turn it over to the community now. So if you just use the raise hand function that you'll see at the bottom of your screen, I'll keep a speaking order. And if there are any questions folks have about what you just heard related to the site, please go ahead and raise your hand. Do a bit of a slower start here, and we'll just let folks get warmed up and ready.
Do you want to, Diana, do you want to re-show the slide that shows people how to participate maybe?
Sure. Aviva, are you able to bring that up for us? Slide 4, I believe. And again, just at the, folks will see at the bottom right-hand side of their screens, you should see a small hand that will help you. Just like here, you can see at the bottom of the right-hand screen. If you're on a smartphone, it'll be at the top right of your screen. I don't see any questions at the moment, so perhaps we'll move to the next part where we describe a little bit more of the details of this site in particular, which may prompt some other questions and comments. So let's move right into that section and we'll check back in a few minutes. So I'd like to now introduce Kevin Hutchinson from Montgomery Sysom Architects, who's going to tell you about the modular housing and the proposed site plan.
Thank you very much, Diana. So very happy to be here again, and apologies if you hear my daughter in the background. It's just around bedtime for her, so there's a little bit of resistance happening. So I think what we're going to do is just run through a few images to orient us in terms of how the site is organized, and then we will see a few perspectives that show the building in context, and then we'll move into the interior to get a sense of what is contained within the building, what the units look like. So here we are looking at a site plan. So north is generally up on the page. We can see Kingston Road at the bottom right-hand side, and Orchard Park obviously is the main address for the site. At the top of the property, which is colored orange, is the existing motel building that is 2 stories and is being renovated. There are 22 units in that building. On the left hand of the site, on the west side, there's an existing building, which is the old motel house form that is planned to be demolished. In the center of the site, the larger solid blue outline is the modular building itself. That's about 20 meters wide by 40 meters deep, and that contains the 64 units. And on the right-hand side of the site is the new driveway, very similar to where there's an existing curb cut entering the parking lot, and that terminates in a turnaround and 3 parking spaces. Then we go to the next slide. This is a view. We're looking northwest on Orchard Park. The modular building is in the center. It is 5 stories tall. It is comparable in height to the apartment building that is under construction. So you can just see that in the background. There's a kind of ghosted white mass. So very comparable in terms of height and mass. Between the curb on the street and the building face, there is a front yard that is planted, including new street trees. On the right-hand side, so in the foreground of the modular building, is the new driveway access. And kind of centered in the image is the new main entrance. So there's a pergola, which is a kind of covered shade structure, which covers a stair and a ramp access that opens onto the main entrance. So that's that wood-lined void you see in the middle of the building. Next slide, please. This is a detailed view of that entrance condition. So we've slid just a little bit up the driveway. We are looking straight at the modular building. In terms of the material palette, what we've tried to do is look at some high contrasting materials. So we've got different varieties of horizontal siding. So there's a dark charcoal and a light gray lap siding, and both of those are created to create some strong contrast and richness. And those are accented by some wood tones, including cedar pergola and cedar railings. And we are looking at providing some color accents in the form of the colored blind. So in this case, we're showing a kind of forest green roller blind. Next slide, please. This is a view from the rear, so we're standing between the motel structure and the new modular building looking south. In the foreground is an open green space between the two buildings that'll be available for all the residents to use. On the right-hand side of the modular building is also a secured outdoor amenity space. And on the extreme right, you can see some people parking their bikes. That's where there will be long-term bike storage available for all the residents. Next slide, please. In terms of modular construction, this is something that has become much more frequently used in the city in the past few years. We've built a few of these now in phase one, both at Macy and Dovercourt. So this is a proven method for us. The real critical piece for us is that the bulk of construction is built off-site in a factory where we have very good control of the environmental conditions and where we can do most of the heavy work not out in the open element. So that means we get very high level of construction. The other critical piece about modular construction is that generally it has a much more compact construction window. So instead of 18-24 months to construct something, we've got 8 to 10 months of construction. Most of that construction happening off-site. So that means a limited impact in the neighborhood, much less impact than conventional construction. Next slide, please. Again, I think we thought it would be useful to illustrate what the typical units look like. So they are modest studio apartments. Each of them is self-contained, as in they have their own kitchen and washroom facilities. So they are truly independent apartments. They're provided and furnished with a bed, a modest living area, dining, and some dressers as well.
Thank you so much, Kevin. We're now going to invite Ryan McNeil. Ryan's a project director in the project management office with the corporate real estate management department at City of Toronto. So Ryan, you're going to take us through the planning, review, and approval process and the timeline to completion.
Thanks, Diana. Okay, I'd like to speak briefly about this process. The proposal for the site to construct a modular building requires two things, relief from the zoning bylaw and site plan approval. City staff have identified that zoning relief required to permit the proposal is minor in nature, consisting only of parking provision. As a result, staff believe that the timelines associated with the project can be met through a minor variance application and a hearing at the Committee of Adjustment. Next slide, please. Yep. Next, I'd like to speak a little bit about the timeline, start to finish for the project. In June of this year, there was a community notification and outreach. June 24th, the end of June of this year, this was the first community meeting. August of this year, renovations to the existing motel begun. October 7th, the second virtual community meeting took place, is taking place right now. October 20th, this is the Committee of Adjustment meeting. This is where the minor variance will be proposed to be approved. And then finally, tenants are expected to move in gradually between December 2021 and then throughout 2022.
Thanks.
Sorry. Thank you.
That's everything for you, Ryan?
I was just going to read the last part. A community liaison is available to receive community comments and questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Ryan.
Thanks, Dana. Yep.
Okay. So I think now we'll go back to our community members who have joined the call and just check in to see if there's any questions or comments about the information you've just heard and this update to the plans from back in June. And again, just use the raise hand function. Okay, we have a question from Richard. Richard, please go ahead here. I'll just unmute you. Okay, please go ahead, Richard.
Okay, I've actually spent a lot of time submitting questions to the liaison committee already, so I won't necessarily go over all of those because there's probably an extra hour of discussion over those again. But what I wanted to ask tonight was, if on October 20th, when the Committee of Adjustment declines your proposal for a minor variance to the city's zoning part count bylaw, what will the city's next steps be?
Okay. Who would be the best person to respond to that process issue?
guess Ryan. He spoke
I think
to it.
Ryan.
I suspect that if there was feedback from the committee, we would take that into consideration and then chart a course forward. That would be our next step. I wouldn't be able to speculate on what feedback they would have right now.
Okay. Also, wouldn't there actually be a conflict of interest in actually having the Committee of Adjustments actually basically rule on a city's initiated plan and its proposal for this minor variance?
Christian, sure.
So the Committee of Adjustment stands at arm's length from both council and staff. They're appointed by council, but they are a quasi-judicial independent body. So, and one of the reasons is because sometimes the city will need variances, and so they stand apart. So there is no identified conflict there. Staff will, even though one part of the city is submitting the application, Real Estate Services, I believe, is the applicant, planning staff, again, are able to offer an opinion on the application without it being in conflict, because we are providing a planning opinion and we're not advancing the application city planning. So the process is set up so that it would be arm's length and there would be no conflict. And that's been established over time with the Committee of Adjustment and relevant case law.
Okay. I guess this is sort of along the same lines. Why is there really no consistency between how the city zoning park count bylaws are applied? And what I'm suggesting is there's a set of rules for developers. There's a set of rules, say, maybe not necessarily in the same context, but for, say, multi-tenant housing. And then there seems to be a whole set of rules around city support housing. And what I'm getting at is you've asked for a minor variance, and this minor variance is actually a reduction of 96% reduction in the number of parking spaces that should be allotted for this particular site. And if you were to take a look at even the development that's adjacent to you, they had to go, or they have to live within the parking allotments that the city proposes. And most recently, the developer that's at 4694 and 4696 Kingston Road, which is just down the road from this site, they also had a parking variance. And the actual parking change wasn't necessarily a reduction in spaces, but an allotment between residents and visitors. What this site has is absolutely no ability to deal with people that would actually be visiting the site, or potentially or homeless people who are currently living in their cars and need their cars to, say, to go to work or the likes of that. So really what you're setting up is a situation where these people have to look at alternative means of either parking, or when visitors come, where are they going to park? Are they parking in the retail parking space next to this place? Are they parking on the street?
Sure. So do we want to, who would like to respond to the parking concerns raised by Richard?
Maybe I can just speak to the people who we're proposing to house, and then maybe Christian can speak to the review that was done by staff. I think it's important to just reflect the nature of homelessness in our city. So we have, as I said, opened or completed a number of projects now. We've also got almost 8,000 units of supportive housing across the city, and we really see a negligible amount of car ownership in that population. People are generally coming to housing maybe after a period of living in shelters or living out on the streets, with very few very few belongings of their own, including, really no assets or any car ownership to speak of. So that's why traditionally when we've made applications for supportive housing, we've been able to kind of explain to the city and the approving authority that really we can, or the building can be successful and functional with a vastly reduced amount of parking. So that's really the motivation behind it, but I'll let Christian speak to the review that was done and the view of the city in relation to that parking.
So we're looking at the minor variance application, and the biggest difference between the proxy sites that were brought up in your question, sir, was that those are apartment dwelling units, where these are supportive housing units. And by kind of a quirk of the regulatory framework, the former West Hill community bylaw is what applies to these sites, which does not have a definition for supportive housing use. So on other supportive housing sites in the city that are subject to the harmonized City of Toronto bylaw, which was passed in 2013, supportive housing is a defined use, and the parking rates are significantly more aligned with the types of users of those buildings and their parking needs. So because the West Hill bylaw, which dates back to the 50s and 60s in some places, doesn't have supportive housing, it considers these dwelling units, which is not the case, because they're not market dwelling units, they're supportive housing units. And that's why they create such a bylaw discrepancy. So the second piece, the second answer to the question is, just because of zoning quirks, we don't, take that at face. So a justification report from a transportation consultant has been submitted, which looks at other similar proxy sites, being modular housing sites, supportive housing sites, and what their established need for parking is. And both of those pieces of information will be reviewed by city staff, and as necessary, opinions will be provided to Committee of Adjustment, so the committee can make its standalone and independent decision on the application for minor variance.
Thank you, Christian and Abby. Right. Richard.
What hasn't been addressed is what are the residents of the support home? How are they going to receive their families, their friends? Where's the parking?
I think so, Richard. I think what the city's just explained is the rationale for the reduced number of parking spots.
No, I understand the rationale. That's understood. No problem. What the question is, which has not been answered, is what are people going to do who actually have friends or family or need support services to come to them? Are they parking on the street? Are they parking in the retail parking lot next to the spot? Are they aware of already or is the city actually aware of the problems with parking in this community already?
So is there someone who can address the visitor parking aspect, since we've addressed the resident parking already? Christian, is that something you can speak to?
Well, I mean, that is information that would be conveyed through the submitted parking justification, or the reduction in parking justification report. I have not personally reviewed that as of yet. I do see some correspondence about it. It has been submitted. It is available through the city's application information system, sir, if you'd like to take a look at it to
I've already read
observe the information.
I've actually already read
Okay.
it. And basically, if you wanted to basically form an opinion through a consulting service where your objective was to actually get your minor variance, or basically to achieve your minor variance, then that's your report. But effectively, some of the arguments that they use are just not appropriate. Even the situation where you can suggest that other parts of the city have actually taken on the safer rent. For instance, you've got I've actually the street that's up by Victoria Park, Levin Massey, for instance. The difference between that location and this location is the fact that that home is actually 300 meters away from the home to the subway, where where we are.
Richard, I think I'm just going to cut you off here, just because I think if there are some concerns around the parking regulations and these respective bylaws and some concerns with the consultant's report, it seems to me like this might be something that you might like to take up perhaps with city staff. They could provide you with a bit more discussion and conversation about this. I'm not sure this is the correct forum to be kind of weighing the merits or not of the various parking regulations. So I think we'll bring that topic to a close, if that's okay, and go back to kind of the project site and the contents there. Okay. So perhaps Christian, if you're able to follow up, and Richard, if you'd like to continue, I think you said you've communicated through the community liaison. That might be another place that you could follow up with there.
Yeah, I'll essentially restate, what I just have restated, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
And my plans are actually to actually attend the Committee of Adjustments meeting.
Okay, great. That sounds good. Thanks, Richard. Okay, so we're going to move on to the final part of our presentation. And Nabi, you're going to take us through how Homes with Supports helped create safe, inclusive communities for everyone.
Thanks, Diana. So we just have a few more slides left here, and it's really about it's really important for us to talk about how we can really make this building successful, and some of the key elements of that, in addition to an experienced nonprofit housing provider, is how the community can come together to support the building. So we've seen through our other efforts across the city and through the existence of supportive housing in many communities in our city, that these kinds of homes with supports, because they offer an opportunity for a welcoming, safe, affordable home, that they really improve the inclusive nature of communities, often making them safer places to be. So through working together, we can reduce the number of people sleeping in our shelters, sleeping in our parks, sleeping outside. We can save lives as a result of that. And it's through that we can make our community safer. But we can only do that when we all work together to see the success of these buildings. Next slide. So some of the ways that we have done this is another supportive housing building. This is an example of how we've used art with the nonprofit housing provider to create a really healing and welcoming atmosphere. This is customized artwork on the balcony entrance to the apartments, as well as on the exterior of the building. So these buildings generally are designed in a way where there's homes that people can be proud of and where people can live with dignity, and they really create a healing and welcoming environment for people.
Great. All right, thanks, Abby. So that brings us to the end of our discussion, or at the end of that presentation. And I'll just turn it back to the group again. If there are any further questions, again, just raise your hand. Any comments you'd like to share with the city?
Diana, there was one thing I forgot to mention in that last piece that I meant to mention, which was the community liaison committees that we've seen for some of the other buildings. And one of the ways that people can come together is through committees that meet on a regular basis to support the operations in the building. And that's something that it might be we can consider if people are interested.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks, Abby. Okay, and we have Richard, a question here again. Okay, go ahead, Richard.
Okay, I just want to make it clear to everyone on this call and anywhere else, I'm not opposed to support housing. What I'm opposed to is support housing that is not getting it right. And I think this particular site, we haven't got it right on a number of fronts. So you can, all the words that have been said are wonderful and appropriate and everything else, but you're not recognizing the situation. In my mind, what we need is something, we're placing people that are experiencing homelessness or about to experience homelessness, not in basically a segregated environment where, you know, this is where you go. They should be included in the community, not in isolation in this one spot or spots throughout the city. This is where you've got it wrong. You've got all kinds of development. The number of people talk about the number of cranes that are in Toronto that are building housing of some form or another. Where you should be placing your efforts is making sure that housing, regardless of where people are, is available in some form in each of those homes, or each of those, say, condos or rentals or whatever it happens to be. Isolating people in a single spot is not the way to go. What you've got, what you're doing as well in this situation is you're saying this home is only for singles only as well. It's not families. Sometimes people who are homeless actually have families. So you're isolating people who are homeless because of no fault to themselves, actually have a companion or a wife or children or whatever else. This home will never be inclusive. It will not, it's barely an improvement on what we've been doing in West Hill and along Kingston Road for the last 30, 40 years.
Great, thank you, Richard. Abby, did you want to respond anywhere there about just the nature of the site? And
Yes, I mean, Richard, you raised some interesting points there about what it might take for people to be successful. And I think all of our approach is really built on a foundation of housing first. So housing first is an approach which has been tried and tested across Canada. And there are really some key elements of that. And you're right, people can be successful in individual apartment buildings scattered across community, but also we've seen success with Housing First in apartment buildings like these. And one of the two key elements really are that people have services that are kind of wrapped around them, whether that be in an apartment setting or in an individual apartment, and that they also choose where they live. And so the choice about the community that you live in, the services that you access, and that choice is really one of the most important parts of what makes this approach so successful, whether it be in an apartment building or in a you know, an individual apartment. And we see that you know, some people, you know, living in an apartment like this is not going to work for them, and they do need that kind of scattered approach, you know, spread across community. And then other people, they like the spirit of living in community and developing that spirit of community inside the building, and the support that they're able to offer each other as they kind of move along that journey towards hopefully well-being and a better health. And so it really comes down to the individual. The one other piece that you mentioned was around singles and families. So the City of Toronto, we do have some information, more detailed information on our website about, you know, who is homeless in our city and the experience that they have. We really see of those people who are chronically homeless, and when I say chronic, I mean people who've been homeless consistently for at least 6 months or more, really 90% of those are single adults. And so that is really where the pressure is coming from in our shelter system. And those are the people we find kind of living outside. And so we've chosen to focus this round of the Rapid Housing Initiative largely on homes for single adults, but we do acknowledge that there are other people in the city who also need support, and there are other programs and other supports that we do offer to families. So this isn't our only approach, but that's why we've chosen to focus these new buildings on single adults. So I hope that helps with them. But your comments are still obviously welcome. I just wanted to perhaps provide some more information about what motivated us to move in this direction.
Thanks, Abby. And we're going to go now to Shelley. Shelley, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I know this is very complex, and the climate crisis and homelessness, I mean, I care very much about them. My question is, I've lived here for 40 years, and what I'm seeing right now, when I drive to work, I have trouble sometimes. I live just east of this site, and I have trouble getting out onto Kingston Road. The traffic is backed up all the way. So driving is a major problem. The bus lanes you've just installed have only aggravated that and made it so much worse. There are several buildings, apart from this one, I see several apartment buildings going up, which means you are in an already overcrowded, in an already stressed area. You are cramming more people, some of which will have cars. Some of those apartment buildings will have cars. And you know, I see your pretty building, and your what you talk about is admirable for the homeless. I totally acknowledge the need to do something for the homeless. But what I see is my area is becoming unlivable. And I haven't heard one word of consideration or care for the fact that sometimes I can't get out onto the road. And I have trouble commuting to work. Like right now, I'm lucky I'm working from home, but I never want to commute again because you've made it so awful. And so it's like, Rick, I want you to understand, it's not that I don't care about all these other things, but you're making this area more and more unlivable. And you're penalizing anyone in a car.
All right. Thank you, Shelley, for your comments. Would anyone like to follow up on the concerns raised, Christian?
So overall, Kingston Road itself, for 15 or so years, has been identified as an area to intensify. And that has been about, you know, both accommodating growth, but also revitalizing the streetscape, making it a you know, kind of a high street where right now it is a throughway. It is a place to drive through. It's not a place to go to. So some of the comments are, you know, well taken. We haven't yet achieved the critical mass from a density perspective to support more transit, but giving people the choice and making transit competitive is part of the strategies behind both the bus lanes and also hopefully in due course light rail transit along Kingston Road. So, you know, that includes, you know, leveraging these sites to be redeveloped to help with, you know, new services, new places of employment, and allowing people to live, work, and play in their community, which is, you know, a cross-city goal. I think, you know, what's exacerbating it a little bit is because people are using their private vehicles more than transit during the pandemic. You know, that will balance itself off, but making it a more walkable place and a community for all residents, whether they are potentially, you know, coming out of experiencing homelessness or are sort of 40-year residents, is a role of inclusion and equity that we should all be striving for. But it will take some time to bring Kingston Road up to be a little bit more, in West Hill, a little bit, you know, more like some of the more walkable parts of Kingston Road, down towards Warden or towards Cliffcrest and those kinds of places. But, you know, on individual development applications, and there will be a couple more, I look forward to hearing from the community on how to get it right, because it's been an area that has been looking for revitalization, has been studied for revitalization, and has been given a little bit of incentive for landowners to reposition their lands to revitalize. And that's outside of the conversation this evening. That's just a general development goal. And to reach, and again, the idea that we can have both this type of building and a, live, work, play condominium next door, and they can all be contributing to a more vibrant and inclusive Kingston Road and a more vibrant and inclusive West Hill. I think that's a goal that Planning, Housing Secretariat, and hopefully residents can get behind, so we can implement the council's decisions to identify areas for growth along this stretch.
All right, thank you very much, Christian. And thank you, Shelley, for your comments there, and just check to see if there are any other questions or comments that folks may have for the team this evening. Maybe, oh, Richard. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I guess what I wanted to share with you some thoughts actually regarding the actual plan for the home itself. And I guess one of the things that struck me almost right from the very beginning, and even before we've got the recent drawings, is the lack of outdoor space for 88 or 86 people. It's hard, the space allotted is entirely insufficient. I know there'll be arguments to say that there's all kinds of parks in the immediate area, but essentially, I've got the park directly behind me in my location. I don't go to the park because my backyard is much more accessible to me than, say, a 5 or 10 minute walk down to the park. So there's no green spaces around this spot. The home itself is really not on Kingston Road. It's sort of set back from Kingston Road and is really more on Orchard Park than it is anything else. But the green space around it, basically we're creating a not livable environment in my mind. Even the amenities with inside the home, the kitchen space, the laundry space are far too small in my opinion, but I'm not a planner. The size of the units themselves, you can just imagine yourselves living in a space that small during COVID or any other time. Just too small. And you've got no amenities, outdoor amenities at all. You've got you've got a little space where you off on the west side, but that's it. The other problem is you've got a situation where, to get, say, something like Wheel-Trans in, you can't even drive in the driveway. You got to go out to the street to get to it. And and the way the plan looks right now, it's not a covered space. Pretty soon we'll be dealing with snow. Where are you placing the snow that exists in that spot? There isn't even a turnaround spot within this complex to basically deal with those kinds of issues.
Sure.
So
maybe I'll just turn to Kevin for a moment too. I'm not sure, Kevin, you wanted to respond to any of those comments.
Yeah, I think there's a few interesting comments there, and I think these are exactly the types of things that we get comments on through our site plan application commenting, and we get the various city divisions very closely at this and challenge us and make us make things better and better. So on the other modular sites, we've heard very similar discussions, and we've made significant improvements through that kind of back and forth in the site plan application process. On the outdoor amenity space in particular, there is a zoning requirement in terms of the amount of outdoor and indoor amenity space required for buildings like this, and we meet those. So that is the same rate that applies to condominiums or other multi-unit residential buildings, and we meet that. So more is always better, but we do have actually a fair bit, and I think maybe what would be maybe is lacking in the drawings you're looking at is maybe a more elaborate description of the kind of character of those spaces. So that is something that, of course, we will develop to make sure they are good and positive outdoor amenity spaces. In our first two projects, I think we've shown that we can provide very good outdoor amenity spaces with projects like this. The second piece on the turnaround is there is a turnaround and a snow accumulation area proposed at the end of the driveway. So we do think about that, and in fact we need to identify it, how that works in terms of snow clearing practices. And the third in terms of Wheel-Trans is because our thinking here is that Orchard Park is not a high order street, and the travel distance from the main entrance and the barrier-free path of travel from that entrance to the Wheel-Trans pickup drop-off has a very good line of sight, and the travel distance is totally appropriate. So we do not typically provide covered pickup drop-off areas for a building like this the same way you would for a hospital or something else, but it would not be typical in a residential building like this to provide a covered pickup drop-off for Wheel-Trans in particular.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Thank you, Richard, for your comments as well. Right. So I think maybe at the end of our session together, and I'll just share here if you'd like to follow up. And Richard, again, I encourage you to connect with the community liaison, and through the community liaison, you'll be able to connect to city staff, perhaps to follow up on some of those comments around the parking concerns that you raised. Thank you for that. You can reach them at this number. And then of course, you can always touch base with Councillor McKelvey at the phone number or email below to further discuss any concerns you may have or ideas. So I'd like to thank you all very much for participating this evening. Thank you to our community members who joined the call. Thank you to your staff who were here to present information and respond. And thank you as well to Councillor McKelvey for joining this evening. And I'd just like to wish everyone a safe, restful evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the future.
Good night. Thanks, Diana. Okay, bye.